So let's say that we're working with the unit circle, a circle with a radius of 1, and we've got an angle that's formed from the x-axis and the radius of this circle. The radius, again, is just 1. So we've got this angle, I'm going to call it theta, and it's formed using the radius and just the x-axis. So where that radius meets the circle, remember, that is where we get our updated definitions of sine and cosine. So it turns out this point, x and y, turns out that's actually, our cosine and our sine value. So if we know this point, then we also know the cosine and sine of that corresponding angle. So what I'm going to do here is show you where one of these big theorems that we have to learn in this classroom comes from. So it's called the Pythagorean identity. And to prove where this Pythagorean identity comes from, I'm going to show you using the Pythagorean theorem. So I've already got my triangle drawn here. It is a right triangle, so that means, if it's a right triangle, that means good old-fashioned Pythagorean theorem applies. So I'm going to take the two legs of the triangle x and y that I have labeled here, and I'm going to set up the Pythagorean theorem. So x squared plus y squared equals the hypotenuse squared. But we're working with a unit circle, and this hypotenuse is in fact our radius, so our hypotenuse is just 1. So x squared plus y squared equals 1 squared. So 1 squared is, of course, just 1. So here's where our new result comes in. Remember that when we're working with the unit circle, this x and this y are actually our sine and cosine values. Sine theta is equal to y. Cosine theta is also equal to x. So here's what I can do. Since x is the value of cosine theta and y is actually the value of sine theta, I'm going to make a substitution here. These are the same things, so I'm allowed to substitute for them. So don't really need parentheses here. So cosine squared of theta plus sine squared of theta equals 1. So again, since x is just cosine theta, I replaced x squared with cosine squared of theta. And since y is in fact sine of theta, I've replaced y with sine of theta. So y squared is sine squared of theta. So putting those two things together, we've got cosine squared theta plus sine squared of theta equals 1. And this is what we call the Pythagorean identity. And this is what we're going to use to help us solve problems